Hello everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to the Thursday edition of my bi-weekly behind-the-scenes DM-only live stream, Crafting Icewind Ale, which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of Rime of the Frostmaiden. If you are playing characters by Robin, Frey, Celeste, Edmund, or Thimbleweed, this is not the right stream for you, but for the rest of you, welcome. Warning, there will be lots of spoilers. We stream our D&D sessions live on YouTube every Friday evening. Watch all of our D&D streams and reviews here on YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Rogue Watson and join our official Discord server. Invite link into the description below. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/Rogue Watson. For our campaign, we use Roll20.net. For streaming, I use Open Broadcaster software with Streamlabs. Good afternoon, Morgan. Hello, Lazy DM. Hope you're all having a good week this week. So we are still talking about the Chardelin dig site, which is reminding me of why I don't make a whole lot of from scratch custom dungeons, because it's a lot of goddamn work. It has been nearly overwhelming trying to, I can get the overarching details when I actually have to sit and think, okay, I have to write room descriptions for every room and, treasure piles and all these things. And this is why all these tables are very useful to have in the Dungeon Master's Guide, because I'm actually looking at those and trying to reference and be like, okay, what do I actually need to do here? Because typically I'm just, changing a few things here and there, but generally keeping the layout and the rooms mostly the same. I guess the last time I kind of had to do this was the Goodmead Brewery, I think was the other time where I had to construct a dungeon. And I don't know, that one I had a very clear picture of what everything was. And this one has honestly been kind of changing and evolving as I've been designing it. Even my players being at the entrance right now, it's still kind of changing around depending on my whims and what I'm looking to do. So I have done some additional work finally. So as we mentioned last time, this R4 is going to be an office, and the players will be able to get some information. They'll find a logbook from like the Dwarven four-person that will have some history of the mining facility that includes basically around the time Vaelish Gaunt first showed up and became the new head honcho and the boss, into when he was arrested. So it doesn't include anything about Ness Lantamir arriving or the explosion or any of that happening, because generally by then the dwarves had pretty much left, and that'll kind of help explain the situation of what happened here, and tease the fact that Vaelish Gaunt was not this like a mustache twirling villain or anything. It was just kind of a opportunistic person who had a very set goal, which was to excavate and find Chardelin before really even most people even knew about it, with the goal of actually trying to build a device that would trace and discover the Motherlode, which of course is going to be Ithrin, which the players will discover as they make it through this dungeon. One change I made is I'm going to open up the bedroom, I think. I had a bunch of rubble here and I was going to block it off, forcing the players to go this way initially, but now I thought actually it might be better to give them and to limit the laboratory area up here as well, because that's where the deep gnomes have access to. So instead I'm going to cut off all of this and allow the players to actually make it to Vaelish Gaunt's bedroom and the Ori, but then this part will still be where the rubble is. I may get rid of this thing too. This is a cool glowing door effect I found, but it's kind of annoying. That way it still will funnel them towards either this door here, hey Jason and Stan, or the eastern break room, which has the webbing and the spiders in it. But basically they can just get more information here. Now, I do plan on still having this stuff locked and probably trapped, because it makes sense, even though this place wouldn't have a bunch of magical traps and deterrents, Vaelish Gaunt's personal areas would, because he's got a bunch of basically employees that he's using to mine the tunnels and get the Chardelin, and he doesn't want them getting back into his back laboratory area or actually figuring out like what he's really doing and all that. So he's going to have all these security measures, which is going to be probably the glyph here. I like the idea of putting a magic mouths on these doors as like warnings, and it's in Vaelish Gaunt's voice, which could be a cool tease for when we actually meet him. And again, it won't be this big villainous thing. It'll be more like just this boss of a bunch of workers, and he would just be explaining that, hey, this area is off limits unless you have my express permission, and I am with you. Do not come this way. You have been warned. and the doors will be locked, but obviously if somebody wants to pick the lock and make it in, they can, but then they will trigger a trap as a result. Whereas, so that will be on this room, which will lead to the lab, which will be a major one. And then I guess these two doors, I hate that there's two doors here. It makes sense that there'd only be one, but I guess I could always use map art to just make maybe just a wall here. Kind of seems dumb that he would have two rooms right there. Well, maybe not. It just sucks that I have to do the door thing like twice. My only issue. And the way into the break room, which would be here, would be unlocked and not trapped. So that would be the technically easiest path to take in terms of, you don't want to lock all your doors and keep your players from making it through the dungeon, but of course they'll have to contend with the phase spiders, which is really the path I want them to take. But I want to keep the branching paths. I want to let them explore and get around and make those choices. So I'm going to leave that open to them. R8 will have the lever. I got a thing in my throat. Excuse me. Not like I need to talk for this. So R8 is going to have, the entire room is just going to be the controls for this platform room, and there'll be, everything's written in Dwarvish, but I know some of my players, we just dealt with all the Dwargar, can speak and understand Dwarvish, so that will not be a deterrent for them. But the lever will be very clearly labeled raise and lower, and the platform is currently in the raised position. There will be a thing mentioned in this logbook that says, oh, hey, the gears are kind of acting up. Maybe we should perform some maintenance on them. It's kind of a clue that, like, it's not up to snuff. And then if the players were to actually move it to the lowered position, that's when it would, one of the chains, I think, will snap and fail, and that will turn it into kind of a, swinging thing where people will have to roll a save or fall down into the abyss, which I was just going to do as like a 100-foot drop. It didn't make any sense to have it plunge like literally thousands of feet into the Underdark, because they are still mining, and these things don't, these chains don't go that long. So, but I want it to be a big enough drop where it is very worrisome and very powerful and a deadly thing to have happen. The other thing is, if there's too many people that jump on it at once, I think I was going to decide if there were 2 people on it at once, then you would start to feel like some creaking and it would be a little like questionable. And then if you manage to get 3 people on, medium-sized people, then it would basically have the same effect as if you tried to lower it, where it would snap and break. And then it would eventually, the idea was it would fall. It would first do the sliding thing that would give people a save, and then everybody would get a chance to basically act in some way, and then it would probably start crashing down from there, and then people would get another save to try and like jump onto a chain or something. If they decide to jack with that at all, because they may look at this and say, oh, this is where we need to go, this is the next start of our adventure, let's just pull this and go down, and it's actually just a trap. But it's a trap that the players have to activate, and that is going to be really fun for me, because nobody's going to resist not pulling this lever. Now, if nobody's in this room at all, nobody's on the thing, whatever, and they pull the lever, same thing, they'll see it snap, fall down, they'll be like, oh, thank goodness we weren't there, and then eventually it will break and fall, and then I've got another graphic up here to literally replace this to just show a giant pit. So that just makes this area that much harder to traverse. Whereas if they never touch the lever and they only ever have one person jump on there, they can easily use that to jump back and forth between different areas. Now, the second complication here is, of course, we've got the poltergeist that we developed last time. I was going to have specters, but those of you that were in the live chat on Monday suggested, what about poltergeist? Because they can literally shove people around, and essentially they've got like the force push ability from Star Wars, with just a very simple charisma check versus a strength check. Now, they're not great at it, and I like the fact that it's contested, so it's a more active thing for the players to, battle against, but then you can just hurl them pretty much anywhere. And the idea is these are just spirits of maybe dwarves that had died in the mine or something, like whatever the reason. It doesn't really even need one, but when I triggered this fight, I don't know. It's kind of up in the air. They're just here to battle with, and it might be a case where if the players are really hurting from like the Cold Light Walker or something, maybe I'll use less of them. It's just kind of up in the air on how I want to do that. If they've already experienced this trap and it's kicked their asses a lot, maybe I don't even ever spawn these creatures. That's pretty rare. I expect to use them, but the idea is I don't know when they're actually going to get triggered. Hopefully at the best case scenario, which is I can maybe tease like some you hear like feel the hairs in the back of your neck as you kind of go in here, and it's just, and you think it's just because of the darkness around you, and it's very unsettling. And then at some point, maybe when the party starts splitting up, or somebody starts taking their first tentative jumps, then we can unleash this combat encounter, which should be a lot of fun. And I can also balance it by not making every single one try to do that push ability. Maybe only some of them do that, and the others just fly around and just do their regular slam attack. You know, that's perfectly fine too. So I'll just kind of play it by ear and decide. I just realized the poltergeist, they get the telekinetic thrust, but I don't think, do they not get the same? Maybe that's why it's a different stat block. They actually don't have the Spectre's life drain ability, which is interesting. They literally just smash into people. That's interesting. Poltergeist. Also, the poltergeist is invisible, which is pretty hard to see. So is this technically a variant of the Spectre then, or is it actually a lot different? If it's invisible, does that mean the players just have straight disadvantage trying to hit this thing? It would also be pretty challenging, even though it's AC 12, 22 hit points is not tough, but if it's invisible, I would probably force them to have disadvantage if it's next to you. If it's not next to you, then you wouldn't really be able to see it, I don't think. The rules for invisibility. Conditions invisible. Visible creature is impossible to see without the aid of magic or a special sense. For the purpose of hiding, the creature is heavily obscured. The creature's location can be detected by any noise it makes when he tracks it leaves. Attack rolls against the creature have disadvantage. The attacks and the creature's attack rolls have advantage. Okay, so actually D&D makes it very simple. It's just like invisible is just permanent disadvantage advantage. Well, that changes things a lot. That's almost a little fine print right there. Like, oh, by the way, everybody has disadvantage on this thing, and it has advantage on its attacks. That's huge. Creatures. I don't think the players have a good way of doing that. Although I do appreciate when they try to be clever, and they're like, well, I guess Fairy Fire, right? Fairy Fire would be the best way to do it. You could light them up with that. I think Thimbleweed can cast that. Breath in the ears. Okay, yeah, so you can perceive them. I like that rule then. Just straight up disadvantage and advantage. That totally makes sense. I'm gonna need to remember that for the live stream because I'm probably gonna forget they all have advantage on their attack. I guess that wouldn't count as the thrust having advantage though. It just said advantage on attacks, not necessarily on its contested charisma versus strength check. Can also hurl things around, but I don't think it doesn't do much damage with that either. Yeah, so in this case, they will be pushing PCs into the giant trap, which is this pit, which is a fucking... again, I'm just kind of pulling it out of my butt, but I was just going to say 100-foot drop, which sounds bad, but I think we decided on average it was like 30-some damage. If we literally look at 10d6, 100 feet sounds bad, but... oof. There's some bad roll right there, or good for me, I guess. Somewhere between 30 and 40, maybe even 40 plus damage, which everybody's surviving unless you're injured, in which case it's real bad. And boy, you don't want to be rolling death saves down there in the pit. That could be fucking scary. And that depends on, if I thrust them like that, do I allow them a save to try and catch on to something before falling the full weight? I don't know. We'll see how merciful I'm feeling. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, throwing flour into the air. Yeah, if you have paint for some reason, like, all the kind of clever things you can do to try and make that happen with invisible creatures. I would definitely allow that. That's outside the box thinking that I appreciate. So this room is hopefully all kinds of fun and interesting because when my players encounter these environmental hazard rooms, they usually take advantage of them, which is why I'm using literally flying ghosts, because you cannot throw flying ghosts down a pit. So it's all advantage towards me and disadvantage to the players. If they're smart, they will retreat. I haven't decided if these creatures would probably attack them like in the entryways here, but if the players like really legitimately just ran backwards, I would probably cancel combat and just not have them pursue. And that way it becomes just a, hey, there's danger in this room, and you know what? You can actually avoid this room entirely if you want to, because you can, the way this dungeon is designed, you can actually go around this room and never enter it. It is not required at all. You can go around and deal with the phase spiders over there. I am keeping it's not about damage, about the emotions. Yeah. I'm going to keep this Cold Light Walker here. I really like this spot. I like the idea that, and I've tested it out by seeing my players see from their point of view. They climb up here and you can see it. Boom, that looks awesome. You see that light radiating from it. It's just shuffling along. In terms of what it's doing, what its motivation is, I assume it was also brought here. These are created by Auril as they're very powerful agents that kind of roam, Icewind Dale, but maybe she's calling all creatures to try and look for, the wizard and look for how they figured out. And the minions probably haven't been here too long, because I haven't made it too far, but these creatures were outside still hanging around, whereas the walker has made it inside. However, is a little perturbed because it still has, door. It's got those magic locked doors to deal with that it hasn't gone near. There's rubble everywhere. It basically just does not have the run of the dungeon. It doesn't literally know how to open doors. I don't know, but for whatever reason, it's only made it this far. But it is hostile to the players. So, and because it's in a hallway, I'm basically going to trigger its attack the second they see it. I think, because if I give them, it depends on if I want to. I don't think I'm going to do a surprise round, actually. Well, I can't decide now. Surprise does help me a lot. It makes it interesting because the players don't know. You know what? I'm going to leave it up to them to stealth around. If they see this light, I'll remind them they see this light shining through. Can you actually see it from in here? Okay, a little bit. I may remind them, or if they walk past, I'll remind them about this light and this kind of quiet shuffling sound. Maybe if they roll perception, I can have it be like you think you hear like a person-sized figure shuffling around in there. I don't think they give off moaning sounds or anything, because then it's just the sound of the wind whistling. So if they decide to stealth around here, then I will have them. I'll describe the room and I'll do the stealth against this creature's passive perception, which is not very high at all. If they don't stealth, then this creature will, and it'll see them, but I guess because of the light, I don't know if I should do a surprise around here or not. You'd like to, because it would be kind of shocking to watch this it's almost like, I'm trying to think of a specific movie scene, but like when it's like that first Resident Evil movie where Michelle Rodriguez, I don't know why I remember this so well. I actually really like the pacing of that movie. It's very Aliens, but they go into the facility and they don't know anything about the zombies yet or anything, and the first figure they meet is like a worker there who's like shuffling along. You're not sure what's wrong with them, so like technically you've spotted that person. They haven't surprised you, but you don't know they're a monster. And then when she gets close, that's when the monster does its surprise round and immediately grabs and attacks her. So that's kind of what I was picturing here, is like you see this figure kind of walking around huddled in robes, and the bad news is, because we're looking at tokens and obviously this creature, it just looks weird. I have a feeling the player might try to immediately say, okay, I attack immediately, in which case, if that's the case, then I would probably just have everybody roll initiative as normal and not do a surprise round. Maybe I'll give the players a chance to respond to that. But if they, in fact, that's probably what I'll do. I'll leave it so if they respond in any way that's not combat, if they try to like walk towards it or call out to it or something, which I hope happens, then I will unleash a surprise attack on them, because I do think, in my mind, that counts as a surprise attack, a surprise round. If it's something that you think has not, even though you perceive the creature, you were not expecting it to attack you, and all of a sudden this thing just looks up and you don't see a face, you just see this glowing light beam, and sudden that light beam just shoots at you and strikes you. Maybe I'd rule that it only gets the one attack off as an initial volley, and maybe even do that before a rolling initiative or something to get it off properly, and then we'd roll initiative as normal. The other option is if they stealth, then I'll do make the entire description of it, and it hasn't noticed anybody yet, and then the players can then decide, hey, do you want to do an attack, or do you want to do you want to try to call out to it or something, or do you just want to keep on stealthing? That's fine too. And it hasn't noticed them yet. So I think those are the rules I will use for the Cold Light Walker, but it's going to be a fun little creature. There's only one of it, but it's if it hits like a fucking dump truck, doing like an average of 25 damage, and it attacks twice. So we can literally down somebody in one round, which is crazy, and it has almost 100 hit points. But it doesn't have like a huge plus to hit or anything, so it's a very, very swingy fight, and there's only one of it here. Very, very swingy. What I would love to do, the purpose of using this creature now, is because I would love to use this as just a single creature, and then later when the players have leveled up some more, you can maybe later in the game use a couple of them, and the player's like, oh shit, we remember fighting one of these guys. Now there's like 3 of them cresting this fucking hill. They're gonna annihilate us, and then eventually use them as like a minion swarm for Oro when we get up to like tier 3 or something. I think that would be really, really interesting. But for now, they're definitely going to scare the players. And it could go down quickly, correct. It's very likely that, it misses its attacks, and it does have 80 hit points, so I would be very shocked if it actually literally doesn't survive a single round. But, yeah, and there's only one of it, so the players could surround and fight it and whatever and beat the crap out of it up. I'm hoping we can keep the fight in this hallway, but again, players could be smart and try to do something else to it. Maybe they can try to shove it over to the pit or something. That's fine too. Like, it's okay. Like, I'm hoping it gets off at least 1 or 2 attacks just to scare the players, so I can like introduce them to like, hey, this is this scary ass creature. But if not, that's fine too. So that is the Cold Light Walker. And then the hallway area is going to be totally open. Hopefully they make it over to this guard room area, which is going to contain my little custom drill bot, is what I've named this creature, which I showed you all last time. I have now built a character sheet for him, which I will be releasing as a patron thing probably later this month, because it's going to have all these different... it's basically a Steel Defender plus a figurine of Wondrous Power, and one of those little Star Wars robots that curls up into a ball and like rolls along and then unfolds itself. Like, it's just a lot of fucking robot ideas that I kind of threw at this thing. The idea being these are little tiny constructs that can help dig out and mine an area, and obviously it can be weaponized pretty easily. In this case, it's the reason I've got this little slash kind of symbol over it is because it's currently deactivated and powered down. And the players, even though they can use mending on it all they want, that's really not its problem. It's missing its like master core or whatever bullshit I want to say, and that master core will be located somewhere else in the dungeon. So basically it'll be a 2-part system to trying to gather this magic item. You'll have to have this creature first, and then I'll probably put the master core back here in the laboratory somewhere. Or I could put it in Gaunt's bedroom. I haven't decided about that actually. But this will be, I don't think it's going to require attunement. Anybody could use it. And it's essentially going to be a familiar, but it's going to be its own creature that can be on the... We're really going to turn... If Raymond takes it, I'm going to turn him into a little Pokemaster with him and that homunculus he's got. I've given it its own abilities, and like the figurine of Wondrous Power, just kind of becomes that creature. And you can cast Mending on it to heal it, which is kind of like the Steel Defender, which again makes sense why the Artificer would want to have their hands on it. And I gave it the ability to just attack somebody with its drill arm and use a kind of rumbling type ability, as we talked about on the Monday stream, and then everybody around it has to make strength saves or be knocked prone, which I think would be very useful for a little familiar to do, because now you've just made everybody gain advantage on melee attacks around you. So even though it doesn't do damage with its prone knocking ability, that's a very good support tool, and I think a good use of its action. It can also retract itself into its ball, which really to me it just makes it easier to transport it, so you don't have to always have this thing walking around. But I thought it'd be fun to give it some kind of mechanics, which is it can actually gain a bonus to its AC and gain damage resistance to attacks, but it just can't do anything while it's retracted. Kind of like the turtle going into a shell thing. That's pretty much it. So yeah, it can repair on the mending spell. If it reaches 0 hit points, which is the way I'm balancing this properly, is it basically just shuts itself down, becomes its little spherical ball, and it cannot be used again until after a long rest. So you can, because mending is a cantrip, there is no rule about it healing on a short rest or anything, because technically a person with mending can just continually cast mending and heal it up to full hit points, so that doesn't really matter. So out of combat, it's basically always going to be at full hit points, because you can just cast mending whenever. During combat, you'll have to cast mending to keep it healed if you want to do that. But I did put it in there that it has to be at least at 1 hit point for mending to be able to work. If it ever goes down to 0, then it goes into that emergency shutdown mode, and you can't use it again until the next long rest. So you have to kind of take care of it a little bit, but I gave it enough hit points and armor class to have it stick around for at least a little bit. I don't know how well it'll scale. It's kind of tricky to scale familiars without just straight up saying, hey, it uses your you know, multiplier for your proficiency bonus and all that. I didn't necessarily want to go into the weeds that much with this creature. And maybe it's a thing where they'll be able to like upgrade it later on the line or something. I don't know. Or maybe I don't need to keep it upgraded. It's just a fun little familiar thing that, you know, whether it scales or not, whatever, it's just an extra magic item you can use. So that's kind of the nifty magic item that I gave everybody in here, but it does require you to get it from the creature here and then the master core somewhere else. You won't be able to get it immediately when you find it. And I'm probably, whenever I put the master core, I'll put a note in there saying, you know, the master cores are kept here for the excavator bots located in the armory or something to that effect. And that would clue the players that they're not just finding this random power source. They have no idea what it does. They know that they have to go back to or somewhere that's an armory. I won't spell it out where that is necessarily. So that's pretty much the bottom half of this dungeon. Oh, one more thing. The room in R10 is going to be a mining storage room where they get a bunch of just bullshit equipment that really we don't care about, which is ropes and torches and pitons and things that they pretty much have anyway. But I did put one exciting item in there, and I looked it up because there actually is rules for this in Dungeon Master's Guide. Dynamite. I put, because that would make sense that they've got some explosives. I don't know if dynamite exists too much in the Forgotten Realms universe, but it does in mine. And if anybody's going to have it, it's a bunch of dwarven miners. So one of these crates down here, if they make it all the way into this corner, will say warning explosives and will include some dynamite. And I was like making it so it's a roll. The players have to roll to determine how many they actually get out of there. I said 2d4 plus 2 dynamites. And there is rules for it. You can throw the dynamite. You can bind them together to basically make a bigger explosion, which is pretty fun. You can do the fuse thing, and you actually do a set number of rounds. There's all these rules. It's towards the end of the Dungeon Master's Guide where they've got like the firearms and things. So that's another cool, like not really magic item, but kind of a finite use grenade thing to give them and make sense to be able to put here. Hi, Pythagoras. TNT indeed. And none of these things are guarded, but if you notice, like that first, you know, combat, they didn't have treasure or anything, so I'm kind of spreading things out. So the monsters aren't necessarily guarding the treasure in this first place. The treasure will require them to explore to different places and grab it. The only time they'll really get treasure from defeating monsters will probably be when they finally deal with the deep gnomes up here, which the reason I'm stalling is because I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing with all that stuff up there. Boy, all right, so the phase spiders I think are already figured out. They'll be phasing in and out when the players enter on these webs. It's pretty much telegraphs, hey, there's spiders here. And I like the idea of having half of them phase in. You know, the players can attack, and then the next round, those will phase out. The other ones will phase in, just a way to spread the damage. They open this cocoon. I think they'll probably find some, maybe some +1 arrows or something useful in there, but then spill out a bunch of spiders. Or if we're already in the middle of the fight, I may have the spiders spill out anyway, because it feels weird to wait, but I don't know, it depends. And I'm going to keep a deep gnome in here who's been trapped. He's been trying to figure out a way to explore more of this facility, but obviously there's giant spiders everywhere, so yikes. Climbing kits, yeah, for sure. I mean, basically, I guess if there's information, I think it's in the player's handbook that has all that adventuring gear type stuff, they'll be able to restock here, but I've kind of mentioned before that we don't necessarily keep track or use any of that stuff. It's just kind of assumed that you have a lot of it. But if for some reason it comes up that they don't, the only thing like is potions really that is important to grab, which I did say that if they manage to explore this room in R3, if they do an actual investigation check, they'll be able to find some proper potions in there. But most of these areas will be pretty picked over and empty because I mentioned in the logbook that I'm putting in R4 that the dwarves knew when Gaunt got arrested, and they kind of cleaned this place out and left because they were afraid that it was going to get busted down by the authorities, even though nobody in 10 Towns ended up knowing about this place. I could still probably put some more treasure in here. I liked the idea of giving Thimbleweed something because he definitely needs a magic item. And I do, who was it? Nick, I think, mentioned in the comments about some kind of cool, like, rifle type thing because, you know, again, the dwarving, mining, construction engineer thing. That's not a bad idea, and I looked up maybe some firearms because now I'm thinking maybe instead of giving him just a better bow, at least here in this dungeon, that would be a straight upgrade. Maybe I give him a another kind of ranged weapon that maybe has some situational uses, so we wouldn't necessarily want to use it all the time. And especially if it's like a firearm, then it's, you know, it requires reloading. Maybe it does, maybe it can't, and maybe it's like a shotgun type thing that's pretty experimental. Maybe it was used to like, maybe it was a blasting gun that was used to blast up, you know, rocks and things. So it's kind of a blunderbuss or whatever that really is only effective at short range, but it's like extra effective at short range, and maybe it can do like a cone attack. So these are all things that I'm thinking of developing. I don't know where to put it yet, because I'm worried now I'm putting actually too much treasure that's going to be readily available for the players, and I've already got the construct thing in R7, so I don't know about putting it down there, even though the armory would make sense to put something like that, but it also would have been taken. So maybe it was back here in the lab somewhere. Maybe I can put another chest where Gaunt's got some treasures stockpiled. Yeah, basically the previous marshals. Oathbow. I know, that's like the only longbow that's in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I've got some ideas for a good bow for him. But I wanted to put that in the Dragon's Treasure Hoard in Dark Duchess. Yeah, they could craft ammo out of Chardalyn. I think there's rules for that. They can craft Chardalyn arrows straight up. I've kind of reminded Raymond of that it takes, you know, 1 piece of crude Chardalyn. Oh, this is the crafting rules are somewhere else. Sorry, but the actual thing does an extra 2d6 psychic damage and can blind them. And Reese was using the crap out of that during that one dungeon when he had these available. So I could either, I could just give him Chardalyn arrows somewhere. The rule I think that I had is that Baelish Gaunt wanted to save all the Chardalyn for himself, and then the dwarves were able to just take whatever hell else they wanted, like any gems or minerals, like whatever they found they could keep. Gaunt was only interested in the Chardalyn, and he had very specific rules about keeping it a secret and not letting the, you know, knowledge of it get out, and also to build all these things. And now I need to figure out what's been going on here. So, as I mentioned, Neslantimir made it back here 2 months after he was arrested. This place had already been cleaned out. She knew how to get through. She was allowed, so that's probably why she didn't fuck with the spiders or anything like that. She had access to the lab because she was a trusted individual. And maybe he had, you know, unlocked everything for her. And she probably went this first path just right up the door and plugged in the divination orb into the arcane device that Gaunt had built. And that's what caused everything to explode, which, oh, you know what? The spiders weren't created then yet because the explosion hadn't happened yet. So she could have gone up that way too. But then that's what causes this giant explosion to happen. All these things are collapsed, partially destroyed. These poltergeists are created. The giant spiders that were down below turned into phase spiders, and they moved their way up through all these giant openings in the ground. All that happened 6 months ago. And then at some point, I don't know, like a week or two ago, I don't want these deep gnomes to have been there that long. These deep gnomes show up and with a Zorn in tow, just exploring, and they kind of just found this place, dug into this dwarven valley, and they've been trying to collect anything that's good in here. And that's where I need to figure out what I've done to my story. So basically, they can't go this way because it's locked this way as well. This deep gnome has discovered that the hard way. This way is collapsed, so they can't make it to the Ori or the... Well, it's, you know, I say that, but then the Zorn's been able to do that. So maybe the Zorn is currently been able to chew its way into here. So I can actually leave... Dynamic lighting. Yeah, I could actually leave this open. Oh yeah, by the way, they updated dynamic lighting. Now you can do it as a wall effect, or not a wall, I think a cliff thing. So it works one way and not the other, which is pretty huge. I've not tested that out yet, and this is not a map I need to actually use that in, but that's a really cool effect. Yeah, so now it says you can change it to wall or one way. Which is, you can't really see the drop down on the stream, but it's, you can switch it, which is neat. Pretty cool. So we get rid of this one. Over here, I guess. They haven't been able to cross this way. I gave one of my players a blunderbuss in my bronze campaign, but a musket ball shoots farther. Shot that goes shorter, but it's 2 adjacent foes. Yeah, that could be good. I think it could be a cool idea to give him like a. I was picturing like a hand cannon, like a big old. I don't know, but yeah, something that's like has shotgun type rules. Just so if he wanted to, he could still use his bow, and then eventually I could maybe give him a magic bow on top of that. But then this shotgun thing still remains useful because it does like a cool cone effect, or deals more damage if they're right next to him or something. So it's an option for him. Or if he needs to fight magic creatures until he gets the magic bow, that's also an option. And that way he probably doesn't need to use his short sword anymore if he's got just a ranged weapon that works in melee. So you kind of go around that. The interesting thing is, though, it would have to be piercing damage for him to really consider it because he's got a piercer feat. Which I guess all guns would do piercing damage, don't they? Does it say it does piercing damage? Yeah. Pretty much all the guns in this. Okay, so that's fine. We can just use the piercing damage thing. And in terms of ammo, I don't track ammo with anything else, so I would just say you could load like, I don't know, rocks in there, and it's got some kind of system where it can just change the whatever crap you put in there into ammo. Like, it just doesn't seem like it. If you want to now, if you have a finite thing like the laser rifles, they get an indescendant. That's different. That becomes like a finite magic weapon at that point. You can only do so many shots, and then it's done. But with the hand cannon type thing, I don't necessarily want to make it a limited magic weapon. I want you to be able to, still fire it, even though you don't technically. We're not doing the ammunition thing, but I could still use the reload factor so that it does eat up your bonus action every once in a while. And I like that I think the shotgun literally has like 2 shots before you have to reload it, which all it takes is a bonus action. But a lot of times players are wanting to use their bonus action to do different things. Yeah, Wand of Magic Missiles is basically a limited firearm. So it can't go this way. The Deep Gnomes have tried to go this way. That landed, one of them killed and turned into a cocoon snack, and the other one is currently hiding, which means you've got the other ones who have been able to fully penetrate the arcane lab. And here's where I run into a problem. What exactly happened to Ness Lantimir after she blew up? Literally, she blew up the facility, but also she blew up herself. She is tethered to this orb. The orb would have really fallen down in here, if we're being honest, but maybe there's another. I don't know. Maybe I need a different art to inspire me. I need to cover up these statues anyway. We ever determine if I can stretch these guys, or does it look real bad if I try to stretch it? Ooh, it looks real bad. Need to picture something where, because maybe the orb is still attached to the device. If I can come up with like a cool altar thing that somehow hasn't fallen into this pit, then maybe the orb is still attached to it, because I like the fact that she is like this super powered ghost, but she has to stay literally within like 30 feet of this orb. I think 30 would be pretty nice, because that'd be pretty limiting. And if maybe the orb is like, I don't know, suspended over the pit or something sexy, and then she would basically have the run of this place. And one of her abilities, though, would be to be able to possess people. So, but maybe they have to. I wonder if they have to touch the orb to possess it, for her to possess them, or if she just has to be near the orb and then they can just grab it. Gotta lock these rules down because it becomes important. And then how does that affect what the Deep Gnomes are going through right now? The one issue I have is the players, and again, I want them to be able to come through here, but they will, there's going to be a magic mouth that appears and tells them, this security system's in effect. If you are, don't have explicit permission to get inside, then you will be dealt with in a lethal fashion. You have been warned, or something like that. Just to clue the players in, like, hey, this area is dangerous. And they can still go in there. They can pick the lock and make it inside. Maybe I can make the lock like a, I don't know, really difficult also. And then that would do hopefully a good damage. But then they could potentially make it inside and have to deal with these gnomes immediately. Is there a gnome that's possessed by her? What are these guys just cowering in the back trying to figure out what to do? Because even if you're if she can possess, I may say that you have to be able to touch the orb to be possessed by her. Because otherwise she would just be able to possess somebody, but then what? She just can't, like... How does that work when you possess somebody but you try to move beyond the orb's range? You just can't? You, like, act like a frozen statue or something? It seems weird mechanically. Maybe you have to physically touch the orb to become possessed by her. Although, then that adds the caveat that somebody could just knock the orb away, and that would free the person. But maybe I want to do that. Ugh. All tricky, tricky, tricky. The gnomes and Zorn are not designed to be hostile, but the interesting thing is, if Ness Lantamir has possessed them, then she could order them to, you know, attack or some way be hostile to the players. I think if they were, one of them got possessed by her, then I think the others would probably realize that pretty quick and back off. Is the puzzle. It's very tricky. I do need to figure out some better artwork to decorate this back room, though, and I like the idea of, I can have the, but see, if it gets real tricky, because this is where I want to railroad things, and it's a very tricky thing to do in D&D, and I don't want to do it too much, but I just have a really good plan for how one sequence of this dungeon operates, which is Valen gets possession of the orb. She becomes possessed by Ness Lantamir, and then because she's a wizard and Ness Lantamir's a powerful entity now, that's when it triggers the boss fight, essentially. And I'd rather not do that I'd rather not trigger that boss fight too early. So, maybe they have been able to recover the orb. You could always argue, when I had an idea that maybe the Zorn got its hands on the orb, and thus the Zorn is actually possessed by Ness Lantamir. It's not a bad thing occasionally, no, and that's what I'm trying to do. The dungeons are very good at not railroading, because they're very, open-ended, and players can go experience different rooms in whatever order and all that, and it's really great. I just want to be able to, I need to trigger this one event in a certain way to make my story work. So I just need to be able to make that happen, which means if I have this orb just sitting out, I need to be careful about, and I guess I could always just trigger a cutscene, like, the players rush forward, I could have Valen, get there even quicker through Mage Hand or something. She grabs it, gets a hold of it. Or yeah, maybe somebody tries to grab it and they feel some kind of effect and Valen snatches it from them. Like, I could probably get away with running that as a cutscene. My problem is, I don't necessarily want to trigger that too soon, is the bummer, especially if they've literally only experienced this. I guess they've at least, if they've made it to here, they've at least experienced this middle room and they've done that part. It does kind of suck if they haven't gone to the left or right sides and go middle first, because then we'll be basically triggering this big boss fight, and I've still got, more story to tell in this dungeon, which is a bummer. I don't know. That's a weird thing. And maybe there's a rule that she can only possess humanoids, so it would be like, it's got her. I don't know. It's like she can't possess, or maybe she's like, they're both going kind of insane because she can't properly actually possess this creature. It doesn't have like a normal mind for her to be able to take over necessarily. In fact, I think a Ghost has those kind of rules, doesn't it, about possession? Can it possess anything? Yeah, it's a humanoid specifically. It has to be within 5 feet. So I would argue that I'm gonna, and it's not I have not come up with a stat block specifically for her. I need to get that nailed down as well. I basically, unfortunately, have to be prepared for the players to activate this room tomorrow, just in case. Although we still have time, right? We're probably going to do the Cold Light Walker fight. We're probably going to explore a few more rooms, and we've got this whole middle room before making it back there. So worst case scenario for me, I think, is that maybe they first enter this room towards the end of the session. I can stop it there and have another week of prep, I'm hoping. Pythagoras, I've thought about that. I've gone back and forth on that a lot. I've certainly been guilty of doing the Zelda thing of locking up boss doors. I have mixed feelings about it ultimately, because I do think having a security warning on there, I'm going to make this door really hard to get into. That, no question there. It'll be trapped, it'll be locked, it'll have a warning on it, like, it'll be all kinds of things. It looks like an official thing. So hopefully the players will get the right idea and explore other areas first. But if not, I don't necessarily want to put a Zelda key somewhere. There's other ways that they can get in here, so it'll be up to them ultimately if they want to make it back there. And I kind of want to let that happen. I'm just trying to figure out how to craft this final encounter thing to where it works how I want it to work. I like the idea of the Deep Gnomes being here as just another faction the players should be able to socialize with. Obviously, it's better if they go right and be able to rescue this guy and talk to him first, because they'll be able to learn through better narrative pacing about what's going on in this room. I also haven't filled out this room at all either. This is, I guess, another security checkpoint in here. In fact, that's what it'll be. There'll be another little warning thing, like, warning, make sure you're proper, you don't have anything. It's like it's a metal, or it's like a metal detector thing. Maybe the room fills up with gas. Like, there's all kinds of these nasty, because he did not want people to come back here. But the funny thing is, you can bypass all this security if you just take this route here, because the Zorn and the Deep Gnomes have just tunneled their way through all of this area. So the players could avoid all of those terrible traps by simply following the path that I have laid out for them, which is finding your way through the break room, defeating a bunch of phase spiders, talking to this gnome, and then making your way over through this tunnel area, and then you can emerge in the lab from the back end. But that still leaves me with figuring out what to do. I guess the biggest question is, and what makes the best story, has Ness Lantamir literally been trapped in this orb the entire time, in which case it becomes like a Genie Aladdin type situation where she gets freed. And maybe even anybody can, quote, rub the lamp, but maybe she decides to possess Valin, and then Valin snatches the orb and then triggers the boss scene. I could do that. That's one option, is that nobody has unleashed the gem yet. Although it does beg to question, what have these gnomes been doing then, if there's just been this fucking fancy thing, that's like presumably sitting out that they can see it. Maybe they just keep hearing like screams and shouts from it. Maybe they've only made it like this far. They're really, worried about this thing, and they keep away from it. Every time they get near it, they hear like a shrieking sound or something. And then maybe they're trying to explore other areas. I may even move this body and say they haven't even made it past this thing because it's been scaring them. That's perfectly reasonable. Option number 2, they have acquired possession of it, and she's actually possessed one of the Deep Gnomes, and she's been properly able to possess it because it's a humanoid, in which case she would have all of her stat block powers. But presumably, and then that changes things a lot, because then her plan would be to get out. Her plan is to get out of this facility and try to reunite with Baelish Gaunt. Maybe she wasn't even aware of how much time has passed necessarily, because it's been kind of tricky for her. And that would make sense about why there's all these bodies here, because she's been, directing the gnomes, basically trying to get them out, and then maybe they think that she's... And in that case, if that's the case, I could have the gnome, possessed by Lantamir, maybe hanging back in the corner, and that even allows the players to make it into here. And I could even put the Zorn, or a pair of Zorns, if I want to make it more of a fight. They're just working on that could actually be pretty fun. If the players end up getting into this room first before meeting the Deep Gnomes, I could have Zorns over here, because she would be able to, if she was possessed by if she possessed one of the Deep Gnomes, that would be her goal as the villain here, would be to try to just get free. And she'd be ordering everybody to get her out of here. So she'd be using the Zorn to make a new path, because she knows the layout of this facility. And if the players make it here, maybe she's not chilling here. Maybe she's just chilling over here and just likes, being part of a Oh my god, you mentioned Fallen. Fallen's such a good fucking movie. Holy shit. Time is on my side. Yes, it is. Tell you about the time I almost died. That's such a good fucking movie. Oh, it's so good. John Goodman, yeah. Rules the old Denzel. Yeah, so I like that a lot. It's got a great ending. It's a wonderful twist ending too, and it ends with the Rolling Stone song too. Symphony with the Devil, Sympathy for the Devil. Good movie. If you have not seen Fallen, go watch that movie. I think it actually tips its hand a little too quickly. I wish it built up the mystery of what's going on, but it's kind of, it's almost a horror movie with very like specific rules for its villain, and it's real good. It's real good. I like that though. Yeah, the touching thing. But I want to do, I want to make that the orb. So I think I like the idea of if you touch the orb, then you open yourself up to being possessed by Ness Lantimir. I like that a lot. And let's say they have been able to acquire the orb, in which case I don't even really need this orb. I like the idea that maybe just one of them has, maybe you see like the eyes are glowing. Like, I don't know if there's some effect of it or not. Maybe it just got this weird like facial features that are different than the other gnomes or something that you can maybe tell. The other gnomes would be able to tell, pretty quickly. They're like, hey, Steve has been acting normal ever since he came in and, was excited and grabbed this orb that was just laying on the ground. He screamed for a second, and then he's just kind of acting real strange, so it can be pretty obvious. And maybe there's, and maybe it's, I've got her like in the back, just chilling somewhere, maybe eating food, I don't know, something. And you've got some like, I don't know, a pair of gnomes here. Now my wheels are turning. Oh yeah, she's definitely she's not gonna be a straight ghost. She's gonna be a super powered like Deathlock white with possession abilities. Like, it's gonna be a whole custom stat block. I haven't determined what the actual DC is, but frankly, it's not something that I'm gonna target the players with, because this just doesn't work for my story. I don't want to just take control of one of their bodies and run off with it. Instead, it's going to be something that happens to NPCs behind the scenes. So, like, whoever needs to be possessed will get possessed. It's more of a story thing than it is an actual ability mechanic. But then that she would be directing, she's already sent gnomes down here. They've died to the spiders. The bad thing is she would probably know how to disable the trap here. But maybe it can't be disabled from here for some reason. Maybe doesn't quite have the override to disable it, and it just keeps on zapping, and she's worried about her frail gnome bodies getting destroyed. So she figures the safest way to go out would be this direction, which is just to use the Zorns to tunnel through, and maybe they've made it this far. They've been tunneling, a couple days, and there's just a lot of rubble blockage in here. And it actually works for this map, too. Okay, I think that's what I'm going to do. I think that works. I think we're going to have Ness Lantimir having possessed one of the gnomes. Now, the interesting thing is, the gnomes and the Zorn may not be hostile to the players if she's not around. And that might be better storytelling for me. God, a lot of this depends on if they hit this room first or this room first. If they hit this room first, I don't have to change anything because the spiders will slow them down. If they hit this room first, that's what I'm preparing for now. And those of you listening by this, the first room I mean the phase spider break room, and then the other room I mean the main laboratory room. If they hit the main lab first, that's what I'm planning for. If they don't, then I'm going to probably change things. In other words, if they go through this tunnel, the side tunnel first, then I'm going to change things around. And that way, what I'd like to do is have them be able to have a social scene with the deep gnomes first before triggering a big battle with the gnome possessed by Lantimir. So literally, you're going to watch me swap these tokens around probably over the course of next week. So if they come into the lab first, there'll be the gnomes here with the Zorn, and maybe she'll be in a different room so that we get a chance to talk to them. And I think that'd be fun because you come across what you think are going to be, you're like, oh shit, what are these goblin-looking things? There's a 3-armed monster, like what the hell? and then the gnomes turn around and be like, ah, who are you? Like, they're just not, you know, necessarily hostile. Oh shit, you made it through the door. We can get out now. The boss will be so happy, and just all kinds of fun there. Bit of a twist. But if they make it through this right side, I may have them, at least a couple gnomes in here, and then I'll put her back over here, the possessed gnome, and have her directly supervising the Zorn that's digging through these the tunnel walls. So I like that. You guys are literally just in here doing this. I may increase the number of gnomes, I don't know. And whichever one is possessed by Lantamir, I guess I shouldn't put a thing on the token because that would belie things a little too much. I could use if I find different token art for a deep gnome, I may do that. Just to help the players visualize it. But maybe not. Maybe it'd be more effective to just have it be like, yeah, one of them is just kind of bossing people around. I like that, though. I think that's going to work really well. And that way we've got more scenes and more involved. And then it can be an interesting social encounter when they first meet the possessed Valen, or sorry, the possessed gnome that's Neslantamir. And then at some point, maybe during that scene, which I'm hoping to trigger in here now that I think about it, because this would be a poor scene for a boss fight. I could just have that gnome just walk up to the party, like casually during the conversation, all of a sudden kind of do the fallen thing like you were talking about, and like slip the orb or you know, throw the orb at somebody, and Valen grabs it, says it's the divination orb, and then nobody realizes it's actually tied to the monstrous ghostly form of Neslantamir who can possess you and has all these new abilities. And the way I would rule it is because she possesses Valen, all of a sudden she's got all this new, because she couldn't do much in a deep gnome. She still has like a lot of her cool ghost powers that she'll have, but in terms of magic, once she gets her hands on Valen, then she'll be able to unleash her full repertoire of magic abilities. And that's when I want to do a cool like 1-2 punch. You can see I've got like a tentacle spell effect over here. I want to do like maybe an Arms of Hadar or something cool and have her just teleport out of there and peace out. And maybe at the same time she summons a bunch of ghosts, you know, some kind of cool boss. I haven't quite worked that out yet, but I don't want to repeat the poltergeist fight down below. But I do like the idea of triggering, basically having that be a combat encounter, but a classic one where it's like the boss isn't actually going to fight you. She's just going to turn on a bunch of effects, summon a bunch of minions, and then disappear. And then you have to fight all that and then realize, oh shit, we just unleashed Neslantamir as a superpowered wizard on the world. Which you might think, oh, how do the players know what to do next? Well, hopefully they will make their way over to the Ori, which the Ori will be still locked to the same position that it was last time, which is when Neslantamir connected the orb. And the reason she did that was to discover more about what Valish Gaunt found, which was he initially found like a large deposit of Chardalyn somewhere in the Ragged Glacier. That's all he knew. And he's like, we need more power to be able to juice this thing up and really figure out like what's there and if we can, you know, what we're dealing with. And Neslantamir goes and gets the more power artifact, plugs it in, and it's got the full like 3D arcane hologram image of this ancient Netherese city. And the tricky thing is I need to convey now without, I'm gonna lose my helpful NPC, because literally I'm gonna take Valen away from the players, and they're gonna know the location, but it's still gonna be in the middle of this glacier, which is gonna be a problem for them. So maybe, well, no, because Valish Gaunt, well, you know, he might have some notes, because he would know the location of the glacier, he just wouldn't know what's in there. So maybe in the lab I could give some clues about, I know there's something in the glacier, we don't know what, I don't know how it's possible to even get in there, but maybe I've heard rumors that somehow I need to tie it to the Codicil of White, I think, because the way the main plot works is you go to Grimskala on the Isle of Solstice, where Aurel's got some headquarters set up, and you get this magic book that's got the titular rhyme of the Frostmaiden on it, and you basically like recite this poem, and that cracks open the glacier and lets you inside the Caves of Hunger. Why? And in the campaign book, Valen just knows all this, which is terrible, but maybe Valish Gaunt has done some research about that, and he knows there's something out there. You know, it would take the power of a goddess or something to get through this glacier, and just kind of tease it, but not really explain like what they have to do.
But what they will know, and something that I would hope to do, is when she teleports away and escapes, she will mention the fact that now it's time to, you know, get the band back together. I need to go help. I don't know how obvious I want to be about like, hey, your next stop needs to be Revel's End, because that's where she's going to go next, which is try to break Valishgaunt out of prison. And that's something maybe I can just tell the players, like, hey, you guys knew you had, your one lead, which is to go here, but the other one was, as far as you know, Valishgaunt is still in prison. You would have more knowledge, and that would probably be your next step. So I could add Revel's End to their map if I haven't already, which I don't think I have. And that would basically be their next step of the main quest, would be to go to Revel's End, which we do have a map for that one, but I'll be changing that one quite a bit as well. You know what I've also considered doing, real quick before I end this stream, as part of her going away thing? Ripping either the bug or a bug, I'm going to determine what exactly is inside of Thimbleweed, and I don't think he knows either, out of his system as this really crazy just boss monster thing to do. And she takes that and goes to Revel's End and then unleashes it as a just monstrous bug that can implant its eggs in people, and then they die and breed new bugs, and that way I get off my LV426 situation, which I really want to do, and I think Revel's End is the perfect place to do it at. And assuming she can just teleport there instantly, even if the players make a beeline for there, which I don't think they will, they need to return to town, rest up, and then maybe do some other quests. By the time they get there, it'll be LV426, which is the aliens planet setting. So that I would love to pull off. That's another like just DM doing bullshit of that's not really mechanically sound of me just being able to pull a monster that's been squirming under a player. But and the question is, do I let him still have his ability? Like, how does that all work? But I think that would be a really cool use of it, because we haven't yet, we're 40 sessions and we haven't had an opportunity yet where it's been able to pop out. Obviously, Sunblight would have been a great place, but we skipped the whole dinner meeting scene, and Edmund kind of, really we took it in a different direction, which I thought was even better, that I didn't want to unleash the monster at that point. And we're getting to where there's not really going to be a good opportunity to use it, except with a place that would otherwise be like a safe place, or at least a semi-safe place, that you could turn into a dungeon. And the Revel's End, I think, is the perfect time to do the Thimbleweed nasty bug gestating monster thing. So that's a lot of crazy stuff I've got planned for this dungeon. We'll still be talking about this dungeon for probably at least another week or two, I imagine. I don't know how far we'll get tonight, but I've got the lower half of this dungeon pretty well planned. The upper half, as you can tell, is just starting to come together. So I think probably by next week I'll have hopefully most of it firmly planned, and I'll be interested to see how far we get there for tomorrow. But I think that is going to do it for this session of Crafting Icewind Dale. Thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoy the content, please check out patreon.com/RogueWatson. Shouts to platinum patrons: Joe Will, Tiny Dancer, Thomas, Adam, Stan, William, I'm Loud, Al, Kyle, Scalenia, Genocider, David, Jam and Clam, Seth, and Nebula99. And gold patrons: RPG, Papercrafts, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Marcus, Dead Lizard, Lion, Sam, Lumpy Spuds, Jerome, Nathan, Fast Like a Tortoise, James, and Lasair. Thank you all very much for your support. I will see you for D&D tomorrow night. Have a good one.